Hey everyone, this is Jonathan with Food Forest Farm. Hope you're all doing well. I'm here in the house enjoying the winter. It's around the first week of March, and I thought I'd do a little video on the design project that I'm working on that we'll be planting about 3,000 trees on about 4 or 5 acres of pasture land in the Ithaca area of New York. So I wanted to just go through a little bit about that process that I'm doing. We're calling it a carbon farm because we're planting trees particularly to try to sequester carbon as fast as we can. Here's my layout, as you can see. I'll go over the details here in a minute. I thought I'd start by zooming in on the map of where I live to get you a sense of where I am. So here's Google Map. I'm just going to zoom in. You can see New York in the northeast, and there's the Great Lakes to the left, and the Atlantic Ocean here on this side. There's a couple lakes here, Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. And our site is right around here, Ithaca, New York. I'll show you. Go ahead and zoom in, and so you can see as we get closer. There are the Finger Lakes. That's why they call them the Finger Lakes. There they are. Zoom in again. Getting closer to Ithaca. There's Ithaca, New York, right there. As I keep zooming, we'll finally get to our location. This is Ithaca, here's 79, one of the major thoroughfares that comes down to this property. Getting closer, there's the neighborhood scale. You can see there are some farms still active, and even though we're rural, there's a lot of housing, and the open areas are fields. There's our site. It's essentially this corner area here, a little bit of woods coming out to the road, and we'll be, as you'll see, I'll come to another map here in a minute, we'll be focusing in on this section of the field, and it's these long strips here, actually solar panels. It's about a 3/4 of an acre solar panel array. There's the site again. So this is slightly downhill. This is facing south, so the sun rises in the east, it comes across and sets in the west. And as this is downhill, the bottom here is a kind of a stream or a little bit of a gorge, and that continues down the watershed into the lake, Cayuga Lake, down where Ithaca was that I showed you earlier. I'm going to zoom back out. You can see some of my tools here. Yes, those are pennies and nickels. I'll show you how to use those in a second. Some writing implements, and then some little pieces of paper with labeled with names. I also use this vellum paper to help me design. And it's important to have a name and a scale. So 1 centimeter equals 10 feet. So here's that same area from the Google map on a piece of paper. And the area we'll be looking at is right here. The soils are mediocre. They drain, but the water table is about 2 feet below the soil level. During real wet years, it stays pretty wet. It's not like a swamp. It's definitely tillable, but it's been in pasture for mostly the last 30 years, organic pasture. So what I like to do is, you can do this multiple ways. You can either use what I call chits to get an idea of where you might want to put your trees. And since I have a scale, 1 centimeter equals 10 feet, these pennies are equal about 20 feet each in width, and that would represent maybe a full medium size tree. And the nickels are just slightly bigger, but it's just I'm using them to show me the different colors, similar size. These are about, 40 feet. The pennies are 40 feet, 2 centimeters. So you can get an idea. So each of these would be a tree looking down from like a satellite. If you were to plant them, you could plant them in any design. These elements, they're called, I call them chits because we're just kind of using them as a example of what could be there. I also like to use cut out piece of paper. This also is to scale. So there would be a walnut, for example. This would be 80 feet. So that was, if we took two pennies, that'd be 40, about 80 feet. You can see how you can get different size tree examples on the same piece of paper and move them around where you might want to put them. And then you can go up even to a different size, down to a different size. I'm using these Legos. Thank you, Lego person. I'm using these Legos as about a 10-foot tree or shrub, 10-foot wide tree or shrub. So you can get a sense about how you can manipulate your vision or design design elements. You can do this with buildings, you can do this with roads, but in this case, so I just did a simple sketch of the outline of where we might go here with the design. You can see here the solar panels to give you some scale. So this is one of the solar panel array sections. This one's about 300 feet. You can see the individual solar panels on there to give you a sense of scale. There they are up there. So put the vellum on there, and what's nice, you can tape this down, which I won't do right now. And you can draw, like here's the length and width of a area that I outlined in a different color. This designates the edge of the field and forest. This designates an area we might plant with trees. This strip right here is an example of a chit where we can move it around. This is a 20-foot wide strip. The red line being a 4-foot wide planting bed. So, for example, you could say, okay, I want to plant, I want to do a 20-foot wide design area, which includes a tilled strip, and on that tilled strip, I would plant trees at a certain distance, different sizes and varieties. And you can see here how it starts to shape up. And so the strip, because of the 20-foot wide strip, you take 4 feet, that red line, for the planting bed, and that's where the trees are planted on some center. And then the green section is your row or your path that you can come down with your equipment. In this case, it's going to be hayed with a tractor in between the trees. So I take this pattern, this element, and pattern it across the landscape multiple times. So, say this would be my planting here. So let's say it would be like some kind of nitrogen fixing shrub, maybe a black locust at 40 feet, full size in 10 years, 20 years. Walnut in 30, 40 years would be 80 feet wide. So that's an 80-foot wide example. And then another 40 or 45-foot tree, maybe, let's say a hickory. So I would take this pattern and I would then just repeat it. Take it and repeat it, take it and repeat it as I go down. And that gives me a sense, because it's to scale, 1 centimeter equals 10 feet. I can get a sense about how many trees I would put in this carbon farm. And of course, there's lots of elements missing that I'm not talking about here today. You need road access, which there is some that comes down already in the landscape. If you were to assess there's a road that goes up to 79 that comes down. Water access, maybe electricity. Here's a connector box for electrical hookup, for example, and other elements in the landscape. You'd also want to design it so that you can see here, in this case, if I put it back on in the right area, you want to think about things that are already in the landscape, so these trees are very big. I don't want to block the sun for these solar panels that are already here. So if this was, say, in 30 years, this shows us that these walnuts wouldn't be too close to the solar panels, for example, and then we still get our about 4 acres of plantings. So that's a little bit of a summary of an example of some design work that I do periodically, and this is a carbon farm in Ithaca, New York area. Signing off. Have a good day. Thanks. Bye-bye.